Good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful day today here in Great Neck. I wanted to share some great information with you. What happens if during the course of a trial, a witness is asked questions and now the witness starts screaming, cursing, and yelling in response to that question? What does the opposing attorney do? What does the judge do in that instance? What is happening in that instance where a witness at trial is now asked a question and he starts cursing and yelling and screaming? You want to know the answer? Come join me on this walk through the neighborhood as I share with you the answer to that question. So now you know there have been times where a witness will be asked questions, maybe on cross-examination. And now the witness gets very frustrated. He gets very upset. He gets very angry with the questions that are being asked by the attorney. Sometimes the witness gets so frustrated, he starts yelling and screaming at the opposing attorney, right? There have been instances where I've been in the courtroom where I've seen a witness start yelling, screaming, and importantly cursing, "You goddamn son of a bitch," and he starts using really, really horrible language. What happens in that instance? Will the opposing attorney turn around and jump up and say, "Objection, judge, the witness is cursing. He's not allowed to do that"? The answer most likely is, it depends. And how's that for a lawyerly answer? It depends. Well, I'll tell you why. It does depend. It depends on a number of factors. It depends on who is asking the question. It depends on the context of what the question is asking for. It depends on what response he gets. So let's say, for example, and I'll use a hypothetical example. So let's say the attorney is now asking this witness about a conversation he overheard someone else talk about. Let's say this is a medical malpractice case, right? A patient has sued his doctor thinking that he was careless, causing him harm and injury. And now this person happened to be standing in the hallway at the time when he overheard a conversation between the doctor and the patient. And now the attorney has brought in this witness to tell the jury what it was that he heard the patient say to the doctor. And what does this guy say? He said, "Yeah, I heard Mr. Jones say that the doctor was a goddamn son of a bitch." And now he goes on and curses, and he's recounting exactly what it was that he heard this patient say to the doctor. In that instance, will the defense attorney, will the opposing attorney jump up out of his seat and yell, "Objection, judge, he can't curse"? The answer is no. Why? Because the attorney has asked a specific question saying, "Hey, what did you hear this patient say to the doctor?" And now he's telling him in exquisite detail exactly what it was that he said. But you should know something, and this is really important. In the instance where an attorney asks a witness to go ahead and explain or tell the jury what it was that you heard somebody else say, there's a legal phrase for that. You know what it is? It's called hearsay. Hearsay simply means, hey, listen, the person who actually said this stuff, who said the offensive, angry, insulting language, is not in court to testify. So this lawyer went ahead and got this witness. Somehow he learned that this witness overheard this conversation. And now he brings this witness in to describe to the jury exactly what it was that he overheard. But here's the problem with that type of testimony. How do we know that that really happened? Because here's a guy who's simply describing what he heard somebody else say. Wouldn't it be better to bring in the person who actually made those offensive statements to testify to the jury about how angry and upset he was after learning this information from the doctor? Or maybe have the doctor testify about that conversation. This way you get it directly from the people who were involved in that conversation rather than from a third party who is now trying to explain and recreate that conversation. The answer is yes. That is the ideal scenario where you bring in the people who are involved in that exact conversation. But there are many instances where we can't get a hold of the people who are involved in that exact conversation. In that instance, we may have no choice but to try and bring in somebody who overheard that conversation. Okay, so continuing this scenario, what happens then? I'll tell you what happens then. If we go ahead and try and have this witness explain what he heard about somebody else's conversation, and we are not bringing in the people who are involved in that conversation to testify, or they have not already testified, you know what the judge is going to do? He's going to say, "Mr. Oginski, this witness cannot testify," and if he already has, he's going to turn to the jury and say, "You are to disregard all of the information this witness has just told you about." You want to know why? It's because there's no way for the attorneys to verify what this guy has said is true. If a witness goes ahead and now starts cursing and yelling in response to my questions on the witness stand. What happens then? So let's say I ask the witness a question, and now he turns to me and says, "Oginski, you son of a bitch, you goddamn, I can't stand." And now he goes on and curses and yells and screams, taking his anger out at me. You know what happens? In all likelihood, the judge is going to admonish him and tell him that that type of language is totally inappropriate. And as a result, he is not to bring up that type of language in this courtroom. The judge will likely tell him to be civil. The judge will likely tell him that that language will not be tolerated. And if the witness continues to do that, now there are different penalties that the judge could impose on this witness, and none of them are very good. What happens, though, if an attorney starts to scream, yell, and curse, either at a witness, at opposing counsel, or maybe even at the judge? What happens then? Well, I'll tell you something. You should know that in New York, attorneys have to abide by a set of ethical rules and court rules that say that attorneys have to be professional, and importantly, we have to be civil to each other. We don't have to agree, we don't have to like each other, but we have to be professional and civil. If an attorney intentionally starts screaming and yelling and cursing at a judge, for example, you know what will happen? There are significant legal repercussions that will be taken out on the attorney for not following and abiding by the court's rules and the ethical guidelines in New York. How do you like this information? You know, most people don't talk about what goes on during the course of a trial. And especially nobody I know talks about what happens if a witness actually starts screaming and cursing and yelling in response to a question that an attorney has asked. You know, I realize you have questions, or you likely have questions or concerns about your own matter. Well, if your matter did happen here in New York, and you're considering bringing a lawsuit but haven't done so yet because you still have questions that need to be answered, what I invite you to do is pick up the phone and call me. You know, I answer questions like yours every single day, and I'd love to talk to you. You can reach me at 516-487-8207, or by email at Gerry, Gerry, at Oginski-law.com. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, everybody.